Welcome back, everybody, for our second talk. So this is McCreary talking about the BLoC pattern. I'm sure you've heard about it. It sounds mysterious. It won't be anymore. So let's hear it for McCreary.
Thank you. Hi. This is working, right? Yep. Yeah, I'm David McCreary, and I'm going to talk to you about the BLoC pattern. I'm really excited to talk to you about Flutter. I haven't been so excited about technology in I don't know how long. I mean, I really like Flutter. It's very, interesting in terms of, obviously you have hot reload, but the thing I really like about it is it's really good for reactive programming. So reactive programming is, how you can use events and streams and syncs. And so how many people have done reactive programming? Raise your hand. Okay, good, yeah. So so we're going to talk about that. And the good thing about it compared to reactive programming in iOS, has anybody done RX Swift? You have? 2 people? Wow, that's awesome. Okay, so these people are rare. So I think that it's very hard to do reactive programming in something like Swift that doesn't really support it out of the box. So it's much better to do it on Flutter. So we're gonna see about that. So we're gonna talk about BLoC, but it's not your only option for state management. There's scoped model, which is good for maybe smaller applications, and then there's BLoC. Set state is really good sometimes too. You can use it for maybe changing some forms. Redux is very popular. The React people use that, and then there's NGRX for Angular. That's kind of another similar implementation. There is one for Flutter. There's another one, RX VMS or RX command and get it. It's like a dependency injection and service locator. That's another totally different thing. Not many people know about that one, but we don't have time to really compare all those things. So this is what the BLoC pattern looks like. Some people call it a state management system, but Brian Egan, and I think he's the primary maintainer of the Flutter scoped model as well as Redux. He calls it a reactive presenter, and I think that's a better way to look at this, if that makes sense to you. And the screen does kind of show how it's a reactive presenter. So you have the UI screen there, so the user interacts with that, and then they can send commands to the BLoC, and then the BLoC interacts with a repository, say a database or some API or something like that. And then these things come back to the BLoC, and then BLoC sends streams to the UI, so the UI doesn't have to maintain any state or anything like that. So this kind of does show how it's like a reactive presenter framework. So some of the key benefits of BLoC is that it lets you change your business logic without minimal impact on the application, because BLoC stands for business logic components. And it came from a Paul Soares talk in January 2018. You can change the UI without affecting the business logic, and it's much easier to test the business logic. And for the rare people that are actually doing Angular Dart, does anybody here done Angular Dart? Wow, that's awesome. That's amazing. So if you do Angular Dart and Flutter Dart, you can do code reuse. That is awesome. Do you work for Google? Okay, we should put a caveat on that. Do you know anybody not at Google doing Angular Dart? Okay. Have you ever heard of anybody not at Google doing Angular Dart? You know somebody?
We tried it.
Oh, you tried? Oh, okay. Well, that counts. All right, that's cool.
We went to them.
So here's a quick overview about reactive programming. I kind of find talking about reactive programming in an abstract sense very challenging. When I first approached this, I tried to look at these kind of diagrams, and I just wanted to blow my brains out, actually. So, but this is called a marble diagram, and these different colors represent some kind of event. Something's happening. The X represents an error condition, and the little thing here is like the thing is done, and so this is time. So you can think of like a stream, anything. It could be like, mouse clicks. It could be data, something happening on your API, just all kind of things. So a lot of different things can be represented by a stream, and you can see these things. And then the way we usually architect these things is you have a sink going into the stream, and then you have coming out. You can have some event that you can monitor. So rather than talking about this extensively, we're going to actually do some live coding, which is a little bit dangerous. So we're going to see how that works. And to get started, what we're going to do is we're going to work on the stream. And we're going to try to do a second episode where we talk about a sync. So, so we have a little simple app here. This is using some hard-coded data. So let's look at this all persons page here. So you can see 3 people there. And they have some points. I don't know what these points are. Maybe you do. Maybe it's how good looking they are, or the number of points they have on some gaming thing. I don't know. And then they have some colored avatar. So, so anyway, here's what this all persons page looks like. It has a scaffold. It has a list view builder. And then you can see that it builds a single list item. And you can tap on it. And then you can see, you know, potentially, yeah, tap Monica. So you can see that thing show up there. And then you can like increment or decrement. And of course that doesn't work because it's not really hooked up yet. So, so this is kind of the simple thing. So we want to kind of hook this thing up with a BLoC. And so that's what we're going to do. And to get started, let's just put some basic stuff here. So we have some imports and we have a BLoC. And we're going to have a dispose because we want to make sure that we don't have memory leaks. So to get started, we're going to have a all persons subject, and that's a behavior subject, which is a list of persons. So behavior subject is keeps a memory of what's kind of happened in the past, so it lets you see the last value that's been on there. But that's not going to be accessible to the view, so we need to have an observable, which is also a list of persons. We'll call it all persons. And we're going to look at the stream. OK, so we need to dispose the all persons subject, or close it when we dispose. Cool. And so that's kind of getting us started. But we need to get some data in there, so let's fetch some data. And so the underscore means it's private and not accessible outside. So how many people have done Cloud Firestore here? OK, good. Yeah. So this will be a little bit new for some people. So Firestore, instance, collection, persons. So let's look at this data just a little bit here. So this is a simple little collection here. You have some, this Cloud Firestore data, and you can see that there's some names here. The data is not perfect because sometimes it's just names, sometimes it has votes, and sometimes it doesn't. You know, this is real data, so that's how it comes. And then we're going to look at some snapshots. So this will give us an update. Anything on that collection is changed. We're going to get updated on a snapshot. We're going to listen to that snapshot, and it's a query snapshot. Okay, so the query snapshot is like a wrapper of all the document snapshots, so we want to do something with that. So we're going to have a list of persons. So we're going to iterate through all of the documents on the query snapshot. And so this is a nice little utility we can use here. So we have our person data here, and we're going to look at this just briefly. And so this thing has a name and an ID and a points and some avatar color, but this document reference is something we have from the Cloud Firestore system. It tells us like where it is. And then, but we have two nice little convenient constructors here. One is from map and one's from the document snapshots. So if we get a document snapshot from Cloud Firestore, we can just immediately instantiate this thing. So we don't. So that's kind of really nice. And we're going to look at these things a little bit later. Some transactions we're going to do when we get a little bit further along. And then this is our hard-coded list of people, but we're going to be past that here shortly. Okay, so that gives us that, and what we want to do is we want to add that to the list. Yep, and make this thing not so ugly. That's better. Obviously, we want to sort the list because the list is we have implemented comparator on person, and then we're going to add this to our subject. All right, so that's it. So that gives us a fetch. We put persons in this all person subject, and that's a block. So let's see if we can hook this thing up on the page. So right now we have a fixed body, but let's actually put the block on here. And let's see if we can import that thing. Good. All right. So rather than a fixed body, let's look at trying to do a streaming version of this thing. Okay. So what we're going to use here is a really neat function in Flutter called the stream builder. And what this does is it takes a stream of data and helps you construct something. So we have a stream, and it's what we just had, the all-person stream. So, this stream is just some data is coming. So, we don't know when that's going to show up. And then we're going to have a builder method, which takes a context and an asynchronous snapshot of a list of persons. There we go. Okay. Nope. Okay, good. All right. So, but the problem, so that's asynchronous snapshot. Anytime it gets updated, this thing will be called, and you'll get a new asynchronous snapshot. So, but we don't know if there's data on that stream yet. So we can check to see if it has data, and if there's no data, we're going to just return a linear progress indicator. That's one of those little things that goes back and forth at the top of the screen. Yeah. So we're going to show that. And if it does, we're going to have a list of persons, and then we'll just return the list view. Like that. Okay. Okay, so we're not using that thing, so let's hook that thing up here. All right. Oh, wow. There's actually some data there. Okay, so that is pretty remarkable that this thing actually somewhat worked. So let's see if this is fake or real. So let's just put somebody on here. We want it to put somebody on there that is towards the top of the list so we can see them. So we'll just say A like that. Ah, unbelievable. So it actually worked. So this is actually listening to these events, and it's getting these things updated in real time. So, so that's pretty good. So this kind of gives you an idea of how you can use the BLoC. But that's not, we're only using it in one place, so it doesn't really make a lot of sense. So let's just add just one small little feature to make it a little bit more interesting, because we're only using the streaming data in one place. So let's count, let's show in the title how many people are there. And so we have a stream, again, of all persons. And we have a builder context. Okay, so if there is no data, let's just return what we already have, which is a text widget, and we'll just say all persons. But if we do have data, let's just return a text widget and say how many persons we have. So we can just say like that. Okay, so we'll just do that string interpolation, and we just need to substitute this thing here. And with hot reload, this thing should work, we hope. Great, 45. Okay. So, so now we're seeing a little bit just in this kind of simple example. I mean, we're only using it in 2 places, but you can see how the block pattern can help you a little bit because we're using this stream in 2 different places. Now, if this is a real app and this stream is just used all over the place, then how are you going to be able to make sure you're getting all these updates? And so, so this kind of simple application can kind of show how that can be beneficial to you. Okay, so let's kind of go back to the slides now that we've seen how that works a little bit, and talk a little bit about subjects. So there are different kinds of subjects in RxDart. So the one we used is a behavior subject. That shows you the last value that came on the stream. Published subject does not. It only tells you the fresh values. And replay subject tells you everything that's happened in the past. So let's say you have a stock trading system. You might say, well, I only care about the current stock price. Some traders might care about that, but other traders may say, well, I want to know what's happened in the recent past because I want to see what the changes are, because there might be some momentum trading, it might be some trend. So they might want a replay subject. So those are, why you might want these different subjects. Does anybody know what subject is missing here? So this comes from the Rx platform, and it's implemented in different languages, including Dart. So this platform only employs these 3 subjects. There's also an async subject, but Dart doesn't implement it, so that's just some kind of detail for you. Okay, so the rules for BLoC are that we should use syncs for inputs. So if you want to do some change, you expose a sync, and we're going to look at that. Streams for output, we just saw that. Dependencies should be injectable and platform agnostic in case you're the Google guy that actually does Angular Dart, and no platform branching. And then there's some guidelines. So if you look at this simple app, if you had a very complex app, you can start to have different classes and have a widget represented in each separate class if you have very complex things. So you might want to have a block not just for a page, but for a very small widget if it's very complex. And then you're supposed to send inputs as is. So like if you want to do some change, you send it like that. Now, sending outputs as is, if you saw how we did the title, we actually did the title in the UI side of the house where we said, okay, it's going to be 40 persons versus all persons. If you want to conform to this block guideline, you could potentially say, I want to send that string and actually send it from the block itself and have the UI have to figure that out. So sometimes these things are, you can go either way. And then branching should be based on some Boolean outputs. Okay, so do we have time to do the sync coding thing? This one is a little bit easier. Yeah, okay. Cool. All right. I know this live coding can be a little bit boring. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to help ourselves a little bit here. And so what we want to do is we want to be able to make some change to this thing. We want to try to hook up some of those affordances. So we have a person command. Let's actually hook that thing up first. And we have something from the Dart async library called a stream controller. And so this person command, this is very simple. You can increment some person points or decrement or change the points or toggle the color. So that's some of the things you can do there. And then we have a person command controller that we need to close to make sure we don't have memory leaks. And then what we want to do is we want to like handle these events. All right, we want to make sure we get that command. So yeah, this should be enough to have a sync there. So let's hook this up somewhere. There's somewhere in here where we actually tap on, yeah, here we tap on something. So let's try to hook that thing up there. And we have the command sync. Add the command. And let's import that thing. And then this thing takes a person. Okay, so let's see if this actually works. Okay, it is not working because the BLoC says it should say something like got person command. So let's see if it's just hot reload. Doesn't always work. So let's see if that's what our issue is. All right, so let's see what we got here. Okay, good. Got person command. Okay, so after doing the full reload, it's working. So let's try to handle this thing. Okay, so we need to actually have another behavior subject to set the current person. So the way this works is you set the current person and then you can change their points. So let's have another subject. And like before, we want to keep track of what was in there the last time we changed it, so it needs to be a behavior subject. We might want to know who the current person is. So let's stream that thing out. And obviously we need to dispose that thing so we don't have memory leaks. And then, okay, so that is, okay, so then let's add that into the sync, or to the subject. Person. Okay, cool. All right, now this might work if we hook it up over here. Oh yeah, okay, so that's that. Oh, so let's see, we won't be able to actually see if it works unless we go down here. And it says no person selected, but it would be nice to know who is actually selected, so we can do another stream builder. And watch that new observable that we just hooked up, that current person. And we have a builder with a context. So this time there's only the person in the async snapshot rather than the list. So if we'll just return what we have. I mean, if there's no data yet selected, we'll just kind of do what we did before and return the no person selected. But if there is, let's see who it is. Change oh yeah, and we need to specify the data there. Okay. Okay, let's see. No person selected. Okay, good. So it's working. So we can see now that Alexandra is selected, Alan is selected. So we are cooking with gas. So we're actually have the sync kind of working. And we're just going to hook up these last little commands, and then we're going to be pretty much good to go. So what we need to do here is, we don't need to hook up all these commands, but okay, so we need to first, before we increment the person, we need to make sure there is actually a person selected. So we're going to check the current person subject. So on this side of the house, we can just use this synchronous value to see if there's a value in there. So we don't have to use the stream. And if that thing is null, we're not going to be able to be successful. We're just going to return, get out of this, and not have any trouble. So, but if it isn't null, we can increment the change points by 1. Or we might want to toggle the person color, and we need an if. Yeah. Okay. So the change points and toggle color starts a transaction on the Cloud Firestore database, so we get the fresh data and then update it. And let's just hook up these two little increment things here. So we BLoC, we add the command sync, and we add an increment points by 1. And then we can decrement. All right, and then we can toggle the avatar color here. All right, so let's see how we're doing here. Problems, okay, fixed body, we don't care about that anymore. All right, no issues. All right, let's see how we're doing here. So we've got Alan. Let's see if we can add some points to Alan. Praise God. We can decrement, and we can, let's see if we can, oh, we can change his color too. Unbelievable. Miracles never cease. So I know this is kind of a little bit contrived example, but we've done some kind of complex things. So we have this floating action button, which is really not a floating action button. It's a floating action contraption because it's like a container and a row and a button and a text at the bottom of this thing, which is kind of crazy. But that's the beauty of Flutter, is a floating action button is just a widget, and it can be whatever widget you want. So, you know, the BLoC doesn't know how you're going to change some of these things, like decrementing the points or these kind of things. But so you can hook these things up pretty easily using this, and so that is pretty good. Okay, let's kind of get back to the slides then. Okay, so this is kind of a quick little example, but there's a couple of problems, and that is that the BLoC access that we did, we just put it on the class itself. And the proper way to do this is you need to have a more sophisticated provider, and we don't really have time to look at that. But this repository is in GitHub, and there's another example on here called the Lazy Friends, and it does use a provider, so you can kind of look at that if you're interested. So what the provider does is, I'll show that in the next slide. So this example, we did the data access in the BLoC. We probably should have a data access layer rather than just do it directly in the BLoC. There is some excessive boilerplate. We do not handle errors in the stream. So one thing you should be aware of is that if you get some error in the stream, it may not continue to give any more events. And that might be confusing to you. If you get an error, you don't handle it, and then you're wondering, well, what the hell just happened to me? Dispose is not called, even though we went to all this trouble. The way I have it architected right now, you will never get that thing dispose called, which is not great. Another thing is sync close is exposed. I don't know. No, I won't show you that. So basically, you just have to trust me. Because I exposed the sync, you can call close on the sync if you're a rogue programmer, and then that sync is closed and no one will ever get another command to work again. So some people don't like to use syncs. They like to use a function to prevent this kind of behavior. And there's no debounce for point changes. If I jam on this thing really quickly, you can see some kind of problem here. Let's watch the console here. Let's just hit this thing. There you go. You saw some Cloud Firestore exception because we're trying to do too many transactions. We should probably do some debounce timer and queue these things up, and maybe not do one at a time, but maybe if you did 3 in 250 milliseconds, let's increment by 3 rather than 1. So there's a lot of nice things that we can do here. And we can do these all in BLoC too. It takes a little bit more time. So that's something. Okay, so where you put your BLoC, there's some options. One is the global singleton. Some people don't like singletons, so they just put it at the top of the widget tree. I guess that's better. I don't know if it's better or not, but it's more work. But then if you want to use the same BLoC in multiple parts of your application for different things, then you can put it in some part of the widget tree and then access it through all the child widgets on that widget tree. But if you're going to do that, you're going to need some kind of little bit more sophisticated provider because you want to instantiate your BLoC, and then you want to be able to get access to that BLoC. And well, if you have a singleton, that's pretty easy. The simple provider is what I've been using in the past, but it just have a lot of boilerplate because it's tied for a particular BLoC. There's a Bolens provider by this Belgian guy named Didier Bolens. Do we have any Belgians here? No? Okay. Oh, are you Belgian? Really? Is he Flemish or not Flemish? Huh?
He speaks French, so he's from Wallonia.
Oh, okay. All right. But he's Belgian, and he has a nice provider that gives you dispose for free. He calls it for you automatically, and it has better performance. And then if you use the Angelov BLoC pattern, and he has made 3 public updates on his pattern in the past 10 days, then you get a BLoC provider on that thing for free also. So these are some nice providers. If you're actually going to use the BLoC pattern, you do more than a couple. You don't want to use the simple provider. You need to use a little bit more sophisticated provider. Okay, so we're getting towards the end here. I have some recommendations. I don't really know what the recommendation should be, but I'm going to take some stab at it, and maybe somebody can come up with the correct recommendations. But we can all agree on number 1. We should use Flutter because it is amazing, and you can be reactive. You don't have to overuse BLoC. Sometimes it's better to just use set state. We should think about layering. Egan has a nice discussion about that. We should probably do some caching to make sure that we can have some higher performance. And we need to be careful of errors in these streams. We use the command pattern in the sync example, and that's kind of nice to do. But you can also do some other options. In the example that's in the Git Rehab repo, we have some lazy loading example. And this can be have some consequences if you do excessive lazy loading, because you have stream after stream after stream, and it can be a little bit daunting. I thought it was great, but yeah, so now I'm going to not have everything stream. Make sure that you're actually calling dispose if you want to make sure you don't have memory leaks, because you might find that you do all this work to put dispose on your BLoC, and then you actually never get it called, which I found out a couple months later. Put your BLoC in the right part of the widget tree, and then be careful where you create your BLoC. If you put your BLoC in some method that gets built over and over when the widget tree changes, you're going to be sheared. Look at the Angelov Flutter BLoC package. It looks really interesting if you really get into BLoC beyond the basics. And one thing that, if you're using a lot of reactive data, I like to have an empty widget that's sized the same size as the widget that's going to come in with the data, so the GUI doesn't jump around too much. those first, couple hundred milliseconds when the data is coming in, so it looks a lot more stable and doesn't give the user some like crazy idea. So Moa, that's it. Yeah, so that's pretty much it for the BLoC pattern.
Yeah, I'm sure there's tons of questions. So, all right.
First of all, thank you very much. It was fantastic.
Oh, thank you.
So I'm actually in a real life situation where I have, we have an app and we need to transfer state. Not so much even just state, but also like next action. All right, so what we ended up doing is we did sockets. So technically here, right, so for example, if we're all playing a game right now, like in the old style game, you could use, UDP and pop it out to everyone. So if I wanted everyone to go to the next level, I could just set it here once, and the BLoC stream would update everybody.
Yeah, so you have a block, right? It says like, say, what is it, like points changed, or what was your example?
Yeah, it could be like just do next action. That's all.
Okay, to next action. Okay, next action executed, right? So then all of these widgets just subscribe to this block, wherever it is. And in that case, you might want to have it pretty high on your widget tree and use a good provider. And then it's just a stream. So I don't know what's in this thing. Like maybe it tells you what the next action is, and then you can report this next action, at this part of the screen or in this screen, or God knows where it is. It could be anywhere. And then you don't have to worry about, oh, well, did I forget to, tell this part of the application? Like if you do, it's like, oh, well, got to make sure you updated it here, and you updated it here, and it updated it here.
So like I just have like one thing is like, where are you? Like if I just have a step, if the thing is 100 steps,
right,
and I'm just waiting for you as a presenter to go next slide, then I want everyone's slide to change at the exact same time.
Right.
Do you think that's a good use?
Oh, so you're talking about across different devices.
Across different devices.
Oh, I see. Well, so BLoC is really, it's not a network thing, right? So you would probably have to...
But it pulls from the Firestore, correct?
Yeah. This pulls from... Well, this implementation has like Firestore, which is also kind of event-based and has...
If everyone's on the
streams.
Firestore, are they not on the...
Yeah. If you're on the Firestore, if I had two apps doing this, these points thing, they would both see this updates at the same time. Yeah.
Okay, cool. Because we're struggling a little bit with WebSockets.
Right.
We got it working, but I don't have to code it, right? We have it, but wouldn't it be great if you wanted everyone to get updated at the same time? You just set a value in a database and pop.
Right. Yeah. The Cloud Firestore is really nice. It doesn't have some advanced tooling that some other databases have, but it's really, I like it. So.
Okay, great. Thank you so much.
Just a question about the program flow itself. You mentioned that you weren't using dispose on your BLoC object. Going with what you said about putting it on the right, on the correct part of the widget hierarchy, should the dispose be on that level?
So, so we have this lazy friends block. It implements BLoC base. And BLoC base comes from the Boland's BLoC provider. And if you look at the Boland's BLoC provider, he has dispose on here. And Boland's BLoC provider says it's about to. Let me see if this actually does some dispose. I think we can see it here. So if we go over here and we go to lazy friends, then we get a lot of lazy friends. So this is actually pulling stuff lazily. If you see how it, so it does like that. So we don't have time to talk about this because we have to get in something called scan stream transform, which is very interesting. But now if I go back to friends, I get lazy friends BLoC dispose. But I don't, you just have to trust me. Dispose is not going to ever get called on the other one because I didn't implement it correctly. So does that answer your question?
Well, it's more about, what would be the correct way of implementing that dispose block on that block?
That's a little bit hard to describe. So the way Boland's has kind of done this is he's got a stateful widget, and he's got several widgets all wrapped up in this thing. So he's got a stateful widget, because you cannot call dispose, like, what's the trick about, there's something about, it's tricky to call like dispose on an inherited widget. Maybe you can't do it. so then he's got a stateful widget here, and then he extends this Boland's block provider, and then he calls the dispose down here on this thing, right here, override on this guy. So yeah, I recommend. So if you look at that recommendation, it has the link that you can really go through this this Boland's block provider in detail and kind of understand it. And if you want to get in, I recommend you do that. So, yeah.
Yeah, I was also surprised to see that dispose method, because my understanding is that Dart doesn't provide a dispose method on just regular Dart classes, right? Dispose comes as part of widget, right? Widget has a dispose method, but just regular Dart classes don't. And I wonder if you've heard about any progress on making that change to Dart so that they could have. I know there's requests for it, but do you know any updates about bringing the dispose method to just proper Dart classes?
No, I really don't know. I mean, some people say it could be. I don't know for sure, because the way I implemented BLoC in this pattern, I put it on that widget itself, that page widget. It might actually been disposed, just maybe not. It might have actually got disposed just by pure luck, but I'm not really sure, because I don't know how these RX subjects are really implemented, so I'm not real clear about it. But I know in the Boland's block provider, I can see it called, so that gives me a lot more confidence.
Okay.
My impression was that the dispose.
My impression was that the need for the dispose method is for sanitizing the stream, not sanitizing, but cleaning up the stream when you're done using
Right.
it, and not necessarily to do with Dart.
With the what?
Not necessarily to do with Dart as a language, but the stream. So you call dispose to shut down your stream and not use any more resources and release whatever you.
Right.
Was my understanding. Just responding to your comment.
Yeah, so I think that my point was that unless you're using the dispose method of a widget, your dispose method won't get called in a pure Dart class, which is I think the issue. Right? So,
because I think the one here is calling dispose on the stream provider, the BLoC, rather than, not sure it's calling dispose on a widget necessarily, but I could be wrong.
yeah, I think it's leveraging the fact that dispose gets called by a widget to then call dispose on the stream. Yeah, that's what's different. Yeah, it'd be nice if Dart had that built in. I feel like a lot of languages have that. They have like a finalize or they have like a destructor that you can tap into and just clean up resources.
Yeah.
It'd be nice if Dart had that. So let's upvote that PR. All right, well, I think that's it. So,
Cool, all right.
Guys, round of applause for David. How awesome was this class? All right, and that wraps up our February meetup. So, January meetup. So I hope to see you in February again. So freaking awesome. We're going to be at Capital One, so we're not going to be here. We're going to hear from the Capital One team, and we're going to hear from the Hamilton App team about that awesome presentation slideshow I built. So definitely come then. And we've got a March meetup, an April meetup planned up, so it's going to be really great here. So thanks for coming. Spread the word, guys. Thank you.